My dear students, welcome to the second module of the chapter After 20 Years. In this module, you are going to comprehend the text and scan for details, and you will learn what is a main clause and you will learn what is a subordinate clause. Now let's go back to our last class. Question number 1, what was the name of the man's friend? And number 2, is the man standing in front of Big Joe Brady's restaurant? And third one, why was he standing there? So try answering these questions. Now, in our last class, we stopped where we saw a man was waiting in a street, and he was telling the policeman that it was an appointment made 20 years before. He and his best friend parted 20 years before, and they had agreed to meet in this same place and same time 20 years later. So he was waiting for his friend to come. So now let's see what happened. It sounds pretty interesting, said the policeman. Rather a long time between, though, it seems to me. Haven't you heard from your friends since you left? Well, we did write to each other for a time, said the other. But after a year or two, we lost track of each other. You see, it isn't easy trying to make a life in the West, and I got rather busy. But I know Jimmy will meet me here if he's alive, for he was always the truest, staunchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget. I came 1,000 miles to stand at this door tonight, and it's worth it if my old friend turns up. The waiting man pulled out a handsome watch, the lids of which were set with small diamonds. 3 minutes to 10, he announced. It was exactly 10 o'clock when we parted at the restaurant door. Did pretty well in the West, didn't you? Asked the policeman. You bet. I hope Jimmy has done half as well. He was kind of a plodder, though good fellow as he was. I have had to compete with some of the sharpest minds to be successful. A man gets in a grove in New York. It takes the best to make him sharp. Now the policeman is telling that though it is a long time gap, it's a very interesting thing, very interesting to hear about the story of the true friends. And all the time this man, the one who was waiting for his friend, he was boasting about his life. He told that he had to compete with very intelligent, sharp people, and in the West it is very tough to be competent enough, and he says that he was competent enough to survive in the West and to make a good fortune in the West. And he said, when the policeman asked him, oh, you did pretty well, and he replied that even my friend Jimmy would have done at least half of mine, though he was a very slow person, but he was always steady and consistent in what he was doing. So I bet that he would also have done half this fortune. And he was telling, he used to talk about Jimmy as the truest person. He is very faithful and loyal person. He always talked about his best friend as a very truthful and loyal person. So he told that if he is alive, I'm sure he will turn up. And if I have traveled a long distance to meet my friend, and if he turns up means if he comes here, then that is worth all the travel, all the hardships I have taken to come here. The policeman twirled his club and took a step or two. I'll be on my way. Hope your friend comes around soon. How long will you wait? I'll give him half an hour at least. If Jimmy is alive, he'll be here by that time. So long, officer. Good night, sir, said the policeman, once more on his beat, checking doors as he went. There was now a fine cold drizzle falling, and a steady wind was blowing. The few people on the road hurried silently with their hands in their pockets and coat collars turned high. And in the door of the hardware store, the man who had come 1,000 miles to meet the friend of his youth waited patiently. About 20 minutes he waited, and then a tall man in a long overcoat with the collar turned up to his ears hurried across from the opposite side of the street. He went directly to the waiting man. So the policeman talked to him and then he continued with his rounds. He told, you carry on. And he asked, how long will you wait here? And he said, at least half an hour I'll be waiting here. I'm sure if he is alive, he'll come here. And the policeman walked away and this person waited patiently. Then, after 20 minutes, he saw a tall man crossing with a long overcoat and he could not see his face so clearly. He came directly to the waiting man. And then let's see what happened. Now, see, there are a few difficult new words here. Staunchest means most loyal. Plodder, here a person who works slowly and persistently at a dull task. See, a person who never gets bored of a work. He does this work very slowly and very clearly, but he never gets bored of it. That such kind of a person is called plodder. Gets in a groove means follows a fixed routine. Is that you, Bob? He asked doubtfully. Is that you, Jimmy Wells? Cried the man at the doorway. Bless my heart, exclaimed the new arrival, grasping the other's hands with his own. I was certain I would find you here if you were still alive. Well, 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 20 years is a long time. The old restaurant is gone, Bob. I wish it had lasted, so we could have had another dinner there. How has the West treated you, old man? It has given me everything I asked for it. You have changed a lot, Jimmy. I never thought you were so tall by 2 or 3 inches. Oh, I grew a bit after I was 20. Doing well in New York, Jimmy? Moderately. I have a position in one of the city departments. Come on, Bob. We'll go round to a place I know of and have a long talk about old times. So the man told that, he asked, are you Bob? And this man replied, yeah, are you Jimmy? And they were so happy. They were exchanging themselves. And Bob noticed something. Jimmy was not this tall when he left. So Jimmy told, yeah, I have grown a little bit after my 20 years of age. I have grown up a little bit more. And then he told, come on, let's walk. And he asked, how was the West? How did you feel in the West? So he told that Bob told that West gave me whatever I asked for. I was very happy. I was very fortunate to be in the West. And they walked. And Bob told, like, let's go somewhere where I know we can have a good talk over there. The two men started walking arm in arm. The man from the West, basking in the glory of his success, was beginning to outline the history of his career. The other listened with interest. At the corner stood a brightly lit medicine store. When they came into its glare, the friends turned to look at each other. The man from the West stopped suddenly and freed his arm. So they held arm in arm and they were walking. All the while, Bob, the man who was waiting near the hardware store, he was basking about his success, the glory of his success. He was basking means he was boasting about, I had become so successful, I made so much of money, all these things. He was all the while he was talking such things. The other listened with interest. The other person, the tall one, Jimmy, he listened everything with interest. And when they reached a corner, there was a brightly lit medical store. So at that time only, Bob, the man who was waiting there, could see Jimmy Wells' face clearly, the tall man's face very clearly. He suddenly stopped and freed his arm from his. You are not Jimmy Wells, he snapped. 20 years is a long time, but not long enough to change a man's nose from a Roman to a pug. It sometimes changes a good man into a bad one, said the tall man. You have been under arrest for 10 minutes, Silky Bob. The Chicago police, thinking you may have come this way, wired as that you are wanted. Going quietly, are you? That's sensible. Now, before we go to the station, here is a note I was asked to give you. You may read it here at the window. It's from Patrolman Wells. The man from the west unfolded the little piece of paper. His hand was steady when he began to read, but it trembled a little by the time he finished. The note was rather short. Bob, I was at the appointed place on time. When you shifted and the dim light fell on you, I saw it was the face of the man wanted in Chicago. Somehow I couldn't do it myself, so I went around and got a plainclothes man to do the job, Jimmy. So, see, very interesting ending, right? We never expected this. When Bob saw Jimmy's face, the tall man's face in a light, he understood that it's not Jimmy actually, it is someone else. He told, 20 years is a long time, but a person's nose cannot be changed in 20 years of time. It's not that long to change a person's nose. Actually, and Jimmy had a nose with a high bridge, but this man had a short nose with an upturned tip. Pug means short nose with an upturned tip, and Roman nose means nose with a high bridge. So he understood from the nose that this is not Jimmy. At that time, this tall man told, "Yeah, I know, I'm not Jimmy, but you know, it's sometimes this 20 years sometimes changes good people to bad people, and you have been arrested for the past 10 minutes. You were under arrest for the past 10 minutes, and the Chicago police had sent a telegram of your picture that you are a wanted criminal, and now you are under arrest." And here is a note from the patrolman Wells. Patrolman means a policeman who patrols in the street, who goes around the street to see everything is all right. So he read the paper, and it was written that I was there on the time, but when I was talking with you, when you shifted to the well-lit place, I mean, when the light fell upon your face, I understood that you were the person who was wanted by the Chicago police. You were the criminal who was wanted by the Chicago police. So I wanted to arrest you, but as I was your best friend, I couldn't arrest you. So I got a plainclothes man. Plainclothes man means a policeman who is not in uniform. I got him to get you arrested. So who was Jimmy? Jimmy was the policeman who came to patrol in the street, who came to walk around the street. So that was Jimmy. How do you feel about the story? Very interesting, right? Now here are a few self-check questions. What did Bob tell the policeman about his friend? How long did Bob wait for his friend? How did Bob realize that the tall man is not his friend? How do you feel about the ending of the story? Had you guessed it? Now, here are the few new words we learned in this lesson, in this module. Staunchest, plodder, gets in a groove, glare, Roman, pug, wired, plainclothesman, wanted, basking. All these words meanings are given in your textbook itself. And basking, the meaning of basking is not given in your textbook. Just refer to a dictionary and find out the meaning of basking. Now let's learn about main clause and subordinate clauses in a sentence. A sentence may have main clauses as well as subordinate clauses. Independent clause. Independent clause means main clause. An independent clause or main clause expresses a complete thought. It can stand by itself as a sentence. It has both a subject and a verb. So independent clause can stand itself. It has a meaning of its own. It does not need a support of the subordinate clause. If we take this independent clause or main clause separately, we can consider it as a complete sentence. So that's an independent clause. We'll learn the examples so that you will get more idea of what is independent clause. Now, subordinate clause. A sentence will have a main clause and sometimes the subordinate clause. The main clause is necessary, but subordinate clause, it may or may not be there in a sentence. So let's see what is subordinate clause. A subordinate clause or dependent clause does not express a complete thought. It does not express a complete thought. It is not a complete sentence. It does have a subject and a verb. It has got a subject and a verb, but it cannot stand alone as a sentence. It has no, maybe we might need some more information to make it a complete sentence. That's why a subordinate clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. It does not have a complete, it does not express a complete thought. Now, subordinate clause. A word such as that, what, or since signals the beginning of a subordinate clause. Such words will be there always in the beginning of a subordinate clause. That I wanted, what you saw, since the most plants die without water. Such sentences are called subordinate clause. You understand, I guess? The meaning of a subordinate clause is only complete after the clause is attached to an independent clause. See, a subordinate clause must be attached to a main clause. Then only it will have a complete meaning. Now read this sentence. There were few people on the road, though it was barely 10 o'clock at night. Now, which is the main clause in this? There were few people on the road. That is the main clause. See, this clause starts with a though. See, that's why it is not a it is not a main clause or independent clause. This is a subordinate clause. The circled one is subordinate clause because it starts with a though. Though it was barely 10 o'clock at night. It is not a complete meaning, but when we read the whole sentence, it gives a complete meaning. So this is the main clause and this is the subordinate clause here. A main clause or an independent clause expresses a complete thought that makes complete sense by itself. The underlined words form a main clause. A subordinate clause or dependent clause does not express a complete thought and additional information is needed to understand the whole idea. The circled word form a subordinate clause. See, this is a subordinate clause. It needs this attachment to make it complete. If we read only this sentence, this clause, we don't get the complete idea. Now this is your take. See, you have to circle the main clause and the subordinate, underline the subordinate clauses. What you have to do is here you have to circle the main clause. The first one is 10. She was 10 years old. That is the main clause here. But this one, it starts with a when. So that's why it is a subordinate clause. When she moved to Delhi. It does not give a complete meaning. But when we read the whole sentence only, we get the complete meaning. So do the rest of the sentence in your textbook and send it to me. You can upload it in Classroom. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Take care.